All right, today we are diving deep into a massive business decision that pretty much shapes how we get, well, everything these days, outsourcing. And to really get our heads around it, we're going to follow the real world story of one company, Urban Style Apparel, and see exactly how they handled this incredibly complex choice. You've probably wondered this yourself, right? You pick up a shirt, you look at the tag, and it says made in Vietnam or made in Bangladesh. And you think, why? What makes a company pack up its entire production and move it halfway across the world? Well, we're going to find out by following one company's journey step by step. Okay, so let's set the stage. Our story kicks off with a company called Urban Style Apparel, and they were facing a really serious problem right there at home. To put it simply, they were feeling the squeeze. So picture this. Urban Style Apparel was a successful fashion brand based in South America. They had a great reputation, they knew their customers, but things were starting to get tough. The financial pressures in their home country were just becoming impossible to ignore. And it wasn't just one thing. The challenges were really starting to stack up. Labor costs were going up, new government regulations were making things more expensive, and all of this was happening in the fashion industry, which is already insanely competitive. Their profit margins were getting thinner and thinner, and they knew something had to give. So what do you do when you're backed into a corner like that? Well, Urban Style didn't just throw in the towel. They started looking for a real strategic solution, and that meant they had to start looking beyond their own borders. And look, this wasn't them just throwing a dart at a map. They did their homework. After a careful global analysis of all their options, they made a decision. They landed on a partner, a textile factory all the way in Vietnam. And that one decision, it was a huge shift for the entire company. Now, what they were doing, this big move, it actually has a name. It's called an outsourcing strategy. All it really means is hiring an outside company to do something, in this case make goods, that you used to do yourself in-house. For them, it meant moving their clothing manufacturing. But here's the thing. This move wasn't some kind of magic fix. It came with a whole new set of incredible benefits. And you guessed it, a whole new set of really difficult problems. I mean, just look at this trade-off. On one side, the payoffs were huge and immediate. Labor costs were way down. They got access to specialized equipment they didn't have before, and their production capacity shot up. But on the flip side, a bunch of new headaches popped up. Quality control suddenly became a massive concern. Communication was a nightmare, trying to work across different languages, cultures, and time zones. It was a classic business trade-off. So, what did they do? They could have just pulled the plug, right? Said this was a bad idea and gone home. But that's not what Urban Style did. Instead, they decided to tackle these problems head-on. They came up with a plan to bridge that global divide. And their plan was super direct, really just two key steps. First, they put brand new, really strict quality control systems in place. And second, they hired new managers, people who actually specialized in international supply chains, to be their eyes and ears on the ground in Vietnam. And the why behind all this? Why go to all that extra trouble and expense? Well, it all came down to one single, crucial thing: protecting their brand. They had worked for years to build a reputation for quality, and they absolutely could not let their new manufacturing process ruin that. These steps were an investment in keeping their brand promise. Okay, so let's pull back from the Urban Style story for a second. What does their experience really teach us about the bigger picture of global business today? What's the main lesson here? It really boils down to this idea here. This case shows us just how strategically important outsourcing is in modern business. It's not just some minor operational tweak. It's a major lever that companies have to learn how to use if they want to stay competitive in the 21st century. And that's the real lesson from Urban Style's journey. Yeah, they went to Vietnam to cut costs, but the only reason they succeeded was because they learned how to actively manage that new global partnership. Success isn't just about finding the cheapest place to make something. It's about building the systems to make it work, no matter where in the world it is. Which leaves us with the final, and maybe the most important, question that every single global company has to face. How do you find the right balance between that constant pressure to lower costs and the absolute need to maintain control over your quality? As the Urban Style story shows us, finding that perfect balance, well, that's the real secret to success.